The following program is for informational and educational purposes only and is not to be considered legal advice. Fraudsters Radio was created to expose the many scams and frauds that have so infected society today. Scammers, fraudsters, and rip-off artists abound, whether it's scamming homeowners with bogus foreclosure relief services, dating fraud, incompetent lawyers, or consumer rip-offs. It's high time the public has a voice. If you work in a profession that deals with fraud, or if you believe you were or are a victim of fraud, you now have a radio-listening public that wants to hear from you. Please feel free to message us through our Fraudsters Radio Facebook page, and we may have you on the show as a guest. If you'd like to call in for today's show, the number is 646-668-8512.
And welcome to Fraudsters Radio. I'm Lori Z, nationally syndicated radio host and consumer advocate, along with my co-host, Storm Bradford, owner of Mortgage Fraud Examiners. And Storm, we're going to have a really good guest on the show today. His name is Mark Aubin, and he's from Top Gun Investigations, because we're going to talk about cheaters, like cheating on your spouse or loved one. And what's interesting about him is he's a private investigator and attorney. So we're going to have him call in just a few minutes. I wanted to also mention to you, regarding mortgage fraud. You know, I have a friend or an acquaintance that believes in a lot of this stuff that's ridiculous, and I still see him posting more stuff. And, what's interesting is he always quotes legal cases, but I know from knowing you that none of this stuff ever works. And so, I get stuck as it's frustrating for me to say to him, you could end up in prison. You could end up in serious trouble. And maybe you can talk about some of the people that have ended up in serious trouble because they didn't listen.
Well, part of the problem is that a lot of these scammers, like your friend who you need to turn in, by the way, they make up things that allegedly were held in a case that the court never said. I see it all the time. There's a Facebook page the other day where this individual, to back up their narrative, cited like 7 cases. And, the quotation marks from what the court said. Not one of those courts said that. And matter of fact, they said the opposite of what person said they said. And, you had everybody was buying into this. Oh, yeah, this is, these banks need to be this and need to be that. And then when I said something, because somebody alerted me to it, I basically said, look, none of these cases say what you say they say. And all of a sudden, instead of people, and then what I did is I actually gave the quotes from the cases, and instead of people thanking me, they were like, he must work for the banks. Ban him. I mean, it's like you had said one time, these groups are committing mass suicide. It's like Jonestown. They're all drinking Kool-Aid, and disaster is what they're facing.
Yeah, they're walking in the wrong direction, and so, I don't know in these other groups that you belong to. I think you've been kicked out of a lot of groups because I know when you tell the truth, they don't want to believe it. They want to believe whoever or whatever people started that group are saying because they latch onto it. And, even me, way back when, I went, wow, this would be really cool, the straw man theory. It's not really my name, or it would have to be in your name would have to be in capital letters or something like that. And I've heard all these different scams, and, of course, now I don't believe any of them. And what's scary is you can do due diligence on some of these groups, but keep in mind some of them were run by attorneys. We even did a show a little bit about, Mark Stopa. So you've got attorneys that are involved also in their own fraud. It's like double fraud to the poor homeowner.
Well, that's the problem is that the homeowner's getting hit on both sides. They're getting hit from the creditor who's trying to foreclose on them. Then they're getting hit from some stall attorney who is basically collecting a monthly fee and the longer they stall it, the more money he makes. But these stall arguments are absolutely worthless, and the outcome is the same. The homeowner loses their home. And intermixed in the middle of it is these securitization audit scammers or chain of title audit scammers that hit them up for money and send them something that's absolutely useless. So they're getting hit from all sides. That's terrible.
Now, and I've got an attorney question for you. So, you have some attorneys that in foreclosure cases do a monthly retainer. Let's just say it's $1,000. So it's $12,000 a year. It's a monthly retainer. Maybe a couple of times a year they file some documents with the court until, whatever happens at the end. On the other hand, you do have some attorneys that work on billable hours. And one of the things that always concerned me was if I'm hiring an attorney, they should be working for the money that I'm paying them on billable hours, not necessarily on a monthly retainer. Because as you know, I used to get a lot of clients that called in on this, and I go, well, is it billable hours or monthly retainer? Why is there such a difference? Because I might answer my own question here, Storm, but it seems like attorneys who just want the monthly retainer are in it more for the money, more so than the people who are working for billable hours. Now, I could be wrong, but it seems like there's something not right about that.
Well, first of all, the ones that are, charging the billable hours, a lot of them won't do that when it's dealing with foreclosure stuff. They want that, $1,000 a month that they're getting every month. And as in a judicial state, if from the time the homeowner misses their first payment until they get thrown out of the house is a minimum of 3 years anyway. And that's if they did nothing. So what you have one of these stall attorneys that's hitting them for $1,000 a month. 3 years, that's $36,000. And like you said, maybe they had a telephonic meeting that lasted 5 minutes. They have a couple of those, but they get foreclosed on at the end. And then
right.
They tell the client afterwards, well, why are you complaining? I kept you in your house all this time. Well, no, they didn't. You'd have been in your house anyway that length of time if nothing happened. It's,
right, you would have had $36,000 in your pocket, to help you move.
Exactly. Matter of fact, that one big scammer down there in Florida, Neil Garfield, he in his booklet where he, quote, taught these attorneys now that get it, and none of them have ever won a case. Matter of fact, another one just went down the other day. One of his acolytes, the Justice Department, just came after him for scamming Hispanic homeowners in Florida. But he even had in one of his books, he said, the average attorney that came and took my courses was making $70,000 a year. They're all now millionaires.
Yes, I agree. And there seems to be something wrong with that.
He's never won a case. None of his acolytes have ever won a case. It's just all about stalling and making money. And even the honest attorneys, we had a guy that was using us. He was up in New York, and he used to send us all of his commercial clients. And so we hadn't heard from him for a while, and so I called him up, and I said, hey, you mad at us? He was, oh, no. He says, you guys are the best thing since canned beer. He says, but I can't make any money. He said, you guys have your system so down pat that all I have to do is just work out the settlement. He says, because all the evidence is everything is there, against the wrongdoers. I just work out a settlement. I'm $300 an hour. Let's say it's a couple hours of my time. I make $600. He says, instead, I can do loan modifications at $5,000 a piece. I don't have to do anything. The homeowner fills out the paperwork, the financial statement, and the hardship letter, and all I do is fax it to the bank. There's no negotiating. You either fit within the MPV algorithm or you don't. And he said, I get $5,000 whether you get a loan mod or not. And heck, I can do 10 of them a month. That's $50,000.
See, that's sad to me because it's saying he's all about the money rather than if he has a fiduciary responsibility to the homeowner, he should be doing what's right for the homeowner. And I know from you, if they do a loan modification, unless there's forgiveness on the principal, all they're doing is tagging that extra money on the back end of the loan. So that's another bad example, I think. And so I find it scary. I think it's bad in Florida, but I guess it's bad everywhere, how do you really know that you have a good attorney doing the right thing? Because there don't seem to be any good attorneys, Storm. Very few.
Well, it's not that. It's just that they don't know how to analyze a mortgage transaction. They don't know the inner workings of banks. They don't know how banks underwrite loans. They don't know if an appraisal is good or not. They don't know all the statutory regulatory mandates that have to be followed. They don't know any of that stuff, and they don't know how to analyze a transaction. So what do? It's kind of like a podiatrist who's somebody, they're on an island someplace, and he's a doctor, but he's a podiatrist, and this person needs major surgery. He doesn't know how to do brain surgery. The person's going to die. So
no, but
it's
it
just
seems
because
like
somebody's got a JD doesn't make them, competent in the field of a very particular situation like a foreclosure.
Right. And, it's interesting, not too long ago, I had looked up, just to see if there were any differences in foreclosure attorneys. And the funny part was most of them were originally bankruptcy attorneys. It seemed like a very large percentage of bankruptcy attorneys jumped on the foreclosure wagon because in the end they knew that the client would probably have to file bankruptcy. That's what I'm assuming. So I think there's something wrong when you don't have attorneys that want to learn how to do things the right way, and they're just doing it about what they put in their pocket and not actually helping people, which is what this show is about. It's about helping people, realize that what they hear a lot of times is not the truth.
Well, but again, in somewhat in the defense of these guys, when we first created Mortgage Fraud Examiners out of our litigation support company, our first idea was to train attorneys on how to do these things. And then it became clear very soon that it would take as much time of teaching and learning by the attorney as it took them to get through law school to learn this stuff. So we just basically said, hey, that's a waste of time. There's just no way they could do it. You can't teach this stuff in a week or 2 weeks or something of that nature. So we'll just go ahead and analyze the transactions and let the lawyers settle them. So, it's somewhat to their defense, and a lot of them, altruistically, they really believe that they're helping the homeowner. They're saying, well, I can't win because they breached the contract. They didn't make payments. So the bank, in the contract, they agreed the bank could take the house. So what I'll do is just stall it as long as I can. They can basically hopefully save up some money and just get on with their lives. So they altruistically really believe they're helping homeowners when, in fact, there is a remedy out there for homeowners. They just don't know how to go about giving it to them.
Right. Well, I agree with you on that. Okay, so there are some that really, that's what they believe. But, it's somewhat like when I look at things coming from the credit business, credit's a puzzle. Like mortgage foreclosure is a puzzle. And you either have to want to learn how to put the pieces of the puzzle together to make it the best way for the client, all within the law, of course. Otherwise, you're really not benefiting the client. And so I take that as a form of laziness because I would think if I were an attorney, I would say, hey, wait a minute. Some of these might not be legitimate, but some of these might be legitimate. And there's got to be a way to win a breach of contract case. And yet is it just they're lazy, they're tired, they want the money, a combination of all above? I don't know. It just seems like there aren't enough. Down here in Tampa, I told you over the years I've contacted over 200 attorneys, and they all gave me, excuses like they didn't want to litigate, they didn't want to go to court. They only wanted to do loan modifications, and not one of them said, oh, yeah, I'll counterclaim if there's fraud. Not one. Not one.
Well, actually, by telling you they don't want to litigate or they don't want to go to court, that's just basically saving face. They're just, instead of saying, look, I don't know how to analyze the transaction, so my answer to her will be, oh, well, I just don't want to litigate and I don't want to go to court. Well, trust me, they would litigate it and go to court if they were getting, paid hourly or had a flat fee, if they could be successful. But unless you have evidence to use against somebody else, you're going to lose your home because you breached the contract.
Yeah. Right. I before we get a break, I think you need to write a book on this. I think you should write a book or be teaching it somewhere. But let's go to a short commercial break, and we'll come back with our guests. Stay with us.
Have you received a notice of foreclosure on your property? Do you suspect that you're involved in an unfair or fraudulent loan agreement? Are you looking for a way to save your home? Would you like to cut through all the misinformation and find out what really works? Would you like to learn strategies that the so-called gurus aren't aware of? If you answered yes to any of those questions, a professional team at Mortgage Fraud Examiners can assist you and your attorney with all of these things and more. Contract breaches, errors, statutory regulatory violations, fraudulent appraisals, and other fraudulent conduct cause most mortgages to be legally problematic. In fact, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation found that nearly 2,000 financial institutions they assessed received citations for significant compliance violations. They also examined appraisals and found out that of the 259 appraisals reviewed for accuracy, only 7 fully complied with professional standards. Call us at 844-920-7200. That's 844-920-7200. Mortgage Fraud Examiners, 844-920-7200.
And we're back on Fraudsters Radio. And do we have Mark Aubin with us on the line?
You do.
Mark, how are you?
I'm just great. How are you this fine month?
I'm doing really well, and I've got Storm Bradford, who is a litigation consultant. He's my co-host. And, Mark, it's interesting. I have wanted to do a show on cheaters, people who cheat, for quite some time. And while looking for people, locally, because I'm local to you, I came up with yours. And what I thought was interesting, your firm is Top Gun Investigations, and it said that you're both a private investigator and an attorney. So maybe can you give us a little history, like how you became a private eye and and an attorney, and what you do now with that?
Well, sure. I started 19 years ago. I initially was a high school teacher and boys basketball coach for 15 years, and got out of that, went to law school, and did that in 2.5 years. After about a couple of years, I was doing some personal injury work and a lot of courses, so I had to retain the services of some licensed investigators, and frankly was not too enamored with the work product. So really started educating on the processes and got some trainings through some contacts I had through FBI programs up in Virginia and some places because of the proximity to MacDill. We got some good access to that type of training. So basically, that was it. I took over my own investigations, and it just steamrolled from there. And over the last 10 years or so, 12 years, probably 95 to 99% of my work has been on the investigative side. I also have an investigative company in Orlando. But that's pretty much where I found it a lot more challenging than the mundane practice of law, to be honest with you. So that's where I go with it.
Well, if I had another career, at one time I wanted to be an attorney, but if I had another career at this point, it'd be private investigator, because I'm really, really good at tracking people down, Mark. I can find almost anybody. Yeah, if I can find almost anybody, I know how to use a computer to do it. And so, people who cheat. So I want to talk about signs of cheating, because I know. First off, Storm's been married a long time, so I've been in my relationship now for 9 years. Prior to that, though, I did have several long-term relationships, and the interesting part is, for me, it was always a gut instinct. There's a gut instinct, a red flag. I don't know what you would call it, but when someone's cheating on you, there might not even be any visible signs, but there's more of a gut feeling. But maybe you can talk a little bit about, what could people look for if they think that their spouse is cheating or their loved one? What are some of those signs?
Well, there are many signs to look for, of course. But I would tell you, in reference to your gut feeling, I would trust that, particularly with females. I've found over the years that they have that gut feeling. I mean, nobody knows their spouse or significant other better than you. And if you get that gut feeling, you're usually right. So you need to act on it and get some investigative work done, because just moving on suspicions is never good. You got to have the concrete proof one way or the other. You might be wrong, but unfortunately, more than 90% of the time, you're not wrong. But that little nagging feeling in the stomach is not going to go away until you've got the answers to those questions, so you can get the peace of mind you need.
Now, are there ways that people can, on their own, even before they hire you as a detective, are there what things can people do? Like, I'm thinking, I watch all these court TV shows at lunchtime when I'm grabbing a quick bite, and so they have investigators that will look at the cell phone, and supposedly they can download things people have deleted, but maybe let's talk maybe about some of those signs. Like when you get a divorce case, I'm assuming a lot of times it's either about money or it's about cheating, right? Those would be my two top guesses.
Well, either way, it's all
right. Well, people steal money too. So some of the things, like when I pulled up
there are some things, because any investigation is predicated on the actual intel that you get initially, and that forms of your investigation. So, like, for example, the first rule of thumb, if you suspect your significant other is cheating, never confront them. And that's the hardest thing to do, because there's emotions involved, and you're hurt. You have to try to set that aside. But the hardest things to do is set your emotions aside. But it's the most critical component. And I tell clients all the time, you have to set the emotions aside and approach this where you can make cogent, sound business decisions, just like you're purchasing a business or going into something where you're spending your life savings on an investment. Because if you confront them, that's out the door. They don't raise their guard. It makes it much more difficult, time-consuming, and inevitably more costly to verify the truth in one way or the other. It's crucial to have the concrete proof. Typically, digital video and covert surveillance. Because any decisions you make, you need to make sure that you're right, because those decisions are going to affect both your personal and financial future in most cases.
And would you recommend people do this on their own, or is there a danger factor? Because it sounds like there's a danger factor in some cases.
There's some steps involved. Of course, every relationship is unique to itself. There are several factors that you can do to gather and kind of codify your suspicions initially. For example, keep track of all phone calls. Write down date, time, and phone number. While he or she is at work, drop in if you can. Make a surprise visit. If you have the opportunity to stop at home at various unexpected times throughout the day, that can be very telling. Tell your significant other that you have to work late, and then get home early. Write down their activities, record times, dates, people, places, excuses, and always make copies of all receipts, mileage on their vehicle, phone bills, credit card statements, ATM withdrawals, anything like that where you can get paper receipts. The goal is to get the evidence you need to make those critical life-changing decisions. In order to get the intel you need, you have to provide more information than less to the investigator. Even the greatest investigator is only as good as the intel he gets to start with. And that's how you build the foundation for any plausible explanation. Because if you confront them, they're just going to make up excuses. They become expert liars. Right. Even those who hadn't lied before in their whole life, they'll say, we were just joking around. I was just flirting. We're just friends. It's a misunderstanding. You're just jealous. Nothing happened. On and on and on. We've seen and heard it all.
I can imagine, because I was watching. There's a court, a couples court with the Cutlers, which is usually my 10-minute lunch, and it's a judge couple, and there was a fellow on today who was saying he didn't cheat at home, and then he was investigated by somebody, and so it came out that he didn't cheat at home, he cheated somewhere else. Yeah, so he wasn't totally truthful.
Well, of course.
You know, Storm. Any questions?
Yeah, I do. How do you get around the advocate witness rule?
Advocate witness rule.
Yes.
Not familiar with it in Florida.
Well, the advocate witness rule is an attorney can't also be a witness in a case. So how do you get around that? You're the one who did the intel. If you ever have to go to court, how are you going to get that information and evidence?
Easily. I do it as an investigator. Under Chapter 493, 6119 of the Florida statutes, that's the confidentiality provision that governs all licensed investigators in Florida. Florida is the most highly regulated state in the country.
No. I'm saying from the standpoint, if you're representing me and I'm your client and you're my attorney, how do you get the witness?
He's answering it.
I have my law practice for the past 12 years is limited to, particularly the last 5 or 6 years, limited to one client. Okay, I stopped doing family law and divorces many years ago after doing thousands of them. I also formerly served as a family general magistrate and child support hearing officer. I stopped doing that many years ago. All I do now is I represent one client, and it has to do with a federal litigation case under copyright infringement, enforcing policies against, it's called e-commerce guidance, e-commerce enforcement. So all the unauthorized sellers on the major online brokers, Amazon, eBay, Walmart has gotten huge, Alibaba, all of them. You have to be an authorized seller to sell a manufacturer's products. If you're not, then you're going to violate the minimum advertised price, the MAP policies, and it hurts the brand. And we've calculated more than 20,000 unauthorized sellers on just Amazon alone, each grossing more than $1 million a year as we speak. So it's just a monumental problem. And that's all I do now. I send a cease and desist because the guy that hired me, this one company called eEnforce, they're phenomenal, incredibly brilliant. They developed an algorithm that they can go out and just search, and they find all the unauthorized online. And then they contact the manufacturers, and the manufacturers, okay, let's go get them.
Yeah.
But I don't practice family law. I only go to court.
Yeah, you're working primarily as an investigator at this point. In that type of a case.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Because I was thinking to myself when you were talking, I said, wait a minute, there's no way that he could be a witness. He can't be the attorney and can't be the witness. So he can't be acting as an attorney. He's got to be.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. I can see the confusion. No, I was called to contribute as an investigator that just happens to be an attorney, but my law practice is very limited. I'm an appointed by the mayor of Tampa appointed me as a special magistrate and hearing officer, so I do that a couple times a month and go hear a lot of appeal hearings for code enforcement matters, red light camera citations, and things of that nature. But beyond that, my law practice, as I said, is limited to one client.
Well, let me ask you to dovetail on Laurie's question. I've been married for 37 years. I got 5 kids. I just became a grandfather. What are the signs if your spouse is cheating on you? What do you look for? What are those signs?
Well, to start with, we're cut from the same cloth, Storm. I've been married 37 years and only 2 kids, but I got 3 grandkids now, so it's a lot of fun. But as far as just general warning signs of a cheating spouse, it's really almost limitless. But some of the more common and obvious indicators, I guess, for example, if you walk into the room, they quickly delete their texts and their emails on their cell phone. You might see numbers on their cell phone that you don't recognize if you still have access to the cell phone, because oftentimes they'll change the password and not give it to you. That's a huge problem. Smaller things that might seem a bit innocuous, but a cheater might start doing their own laundry. They might join a gym, start losing weight out of nowhere. Clothes, of course, might smell of perfume, cologne, or possibly even sex. the cheater can have either increased or decreased sexual interest. The cheater might have to show a desire after for new or unusual sexual positions or acts. These are common predicates. They might leave the room to talk on their cell phone where they never did before. If you look at the mileage on their car, it might not match up with the stated destination. They say he's just going down to to a store or something, whatever it may be, Home Depot, and it just doesn't add up. And then, of course, you can find gift card receipts or receipts for gifts or other purchases that you did not receive. And you find credit card receipts for gas in unusual locations where they would have really no reason to be. I mean, these are just some of the more obvious things that you can notice. And I can tell you, let's not go with the misnomer that it's usually the man. In my practice over the last many years, it's averaged about 70% the female has been the unfaithful one, not the man.
Wow. Well, let's do this. I want you guys to both stay on the line. We are going to go to a quick commercial break, and then we'll continue on. So stay with us.
Sure.
There is a very high likelihood your mortgage contains an extensive error. At Mortgage Fraud Examiners, we know just how costly a missed opportunity can be. For almost 40 years, we have consulted, retained, and referred to by attorneys, lawyers, trial practitioners throughout the nation. Put another way, we are the trusted source for litigation support. A foreclosure is basically an allegation the homeowner breached the contract by failing to make timely payments. The contract is clear. The borrower promised they would make timely payments, and if they didn't, the lender could take the property. The only way to overcome the homeowner's breach is to show the lender breached first. Identify errors that would void the contract. Identify regulatory violations. Identify appraisal fraud and other fraudulent contact. And the only way to find these wrongs is to thoroughly examine the whole mortgage transaction. This meticulous examination of your mortgage transaction and appraisal can identify legal defects that would make your mortgage unenforceable and entitle you to compensation or even free title to your property. Call us at 844-920-7200. Mortgage Fraud Examiners, that's 844-920-7200. 844-920-7200.
And we're back on AM/FM 24/7. And if you'd like to call in, the number is 646-668-8512. We have Mark Aubin, who's a private investigator, and we're talking about cheating. And, Mark, you gave a lot of things that people could look for. I would think that if it's just one thing, I might let it pass. But if I started seeing a lot of different things that you were talking about, then my gut feeling, of course, would kick into action, and I'd probably be saying, well, wait a minute, what are these things on these receipts? And by the way, there's a little phone app I don't know if you're familiar with called Life 360, which you can use a free version, or there's a premium version. And of course, your partner or family members, they all have to be connected. But what it does is it actually shows you where they are. So you can look on a little map, so I can see my other half. And at first he was like, wait, you want to be able to track me? I go, no, I want to be able that when you're going to tell me you're going to be home in 45 minutes for dinner, that, it's an hour and a half later because you're stuck in traffic or you made 5 stops. I want to be able to see how to time it out. So that's really all I use it for. But my understanding is, let's say in a married couple, and let's just say the husband has the phones in his name. I've read that you can buy certain devices that you can actually put in your spouse's phone as long as you're the account holder, and that will track them or let you know where they've been going, or it will let you retrieve texts. And I don't know what the legality of that is, but do people do that? And is it legal?
Well, legality is very questionable. Florida in particular is what I'm referencing, but under federal law, unless that your name is on that account, then you're not really able to get that information. But as far as tracking on the phone and everything, under Florida law, satellite GPS tracking is completely legal as long as you have an interest in the vehicle, a legal interest. So if your name's on the title, registration, or lease agreement, whatever the case may be, then you can slap a GPS on that vehicle, and there's plenty of places to hide them They'd never know they're there. We use them frequently in those situations where it's legal. A lot of people just buy them online and use them regardless of whether it's legal or not. We don't advise that. A lot of people do it, and it's up to them if they want to take that chance.
Let me ask you, Mark. I mean, a lot of what you were saying is warning signs. Is also innocuous behavior. So I guess the question is, which would be helpful for our listeners, would be to answer the question of people that suspected some wrongdoing. What is the percentage of there actually was wrongdoing, or conversely, the other side of it, of the people that you get that suspect something, what is the percentage of innocuous?
I can say that over the last many years, probably 90 to 95% of the cases, that gut feeling is right, because it may seem innocuous, but these people seem to live with these things and these questions. It doesn't just happen over a week or two. It happens over months and years. And the thing is, these warning signs, it's just something's not right, and you can't really put your finger on it, so you don't react right away. And most clients, we always expect honesty, but in cheating spouse situations, you always get lies, and they become excellent liars. Even like I said, even if they've never lied before in their lives. And when people get to the point where you find yourself looking for excuses for their behavior, or trying to convince yourself that there's nothing wrong, that they'd never cheat on you, well, that's when we get the calls.
So how do you find them? I mean, do you actually go out in your car and follow somebody? If how do you find them?
Well, I'm a little. How do I find the clients?
No. How do you find the cheater? Like, is it so advanced technologically nowadays that you don't really have to go out and follow them in their car, or it's like the show Cheaters, where the guys are following them. Do you have to do that at this point, or is there so much technology that you can just pretty much determine a lot of it just online?
No, every comprehensive professional investigation is based on surveillance. We can do less in some cases, depending, because each case is completely different. And we send a case information form along with our service agreement to every client, and they have to fill out all the details. And once we look at it, I'll sit with a couple of my investigators, and we'll develop a surveillance strategy specifically geared towards those facts in that case. Because every case, I don't care how the ladies say in a beauty salon, say, well, my case was just like that. They are completely different. Okay. So what we try to do is maximize our opportunities to document and verify those suspicions one way or the other. And believe me, I'm very happy when we have investigation, as rare as it is, that shows that, okay, this guy's not doing anything, or this girl's not doing anything. But they're very few and far between. But no, it takes surveillance and surveillance, static and especially mobile surveillance, particularly in the metropolitan area around Tampa, is very, very challenging. So we have to usually use at least 2 or 3 field agents for that, depending on the location and where the vehicles are likely to be driving. If it's on a main thoroughfare and that kind of stuff, because the traffic's so bad, they ship through a yellow light and we're stuck. Surveillance is over for the day. So, and that's very common. As far as static surveillance goes, all that intel that's the foundation for building your investigation. We have to know their work schedule, if they work. Where do they go? Maybe they play bingo on Thursday nights. Maybe they go to happy hour on Fridays with the people from work. All those things. It's one of those situations where more is better. Because usually it's the smallest, tiniest detail, and oftentimes what the client doesn't even think was important, so they didn't provide that to us, and that's what breaks the case open for us. So I just tell the client, let us decide what's or not. Just throw it all in here, write it all down.
So I got a bizarre question for you. So if a couple is married and shares joint accounts, and they want to hire you or a private investigator, how do they do that without the other spouse knowing?
Well, oftentimes what they'll have to do is get a friend or other family member to use their credit card, or they can pay cash, or they can go get a money order. We'll work with people as best as possible, because that is definitely
right. Because if the other person saw that, then you don't know what kind of harm can come to the other person.
Right.
For doing that. So you can go into areas, or even like you were saying, you go to a bar, you think they're cheating or work. An investigator can go in there, and they're probably wearing some type of hidden equipment or hidden camera, trying to get pictures of the person in whatever situation they're doing to come back. And then what happens? You show that to your client, and that's got to be, I think, the hardest part of the job, because if 90-95% of your cases they're cheating. Oh my gosh, how do you deal with the emotional aspect of that yourself and telling that to a client?
Well, it's what we do is in our service agreements, we guarantee a full written report with embedded photos and videos, if any, in the final report, and they get that typically in 3 to 5 days after the conclusion of the investigation. So if it's a 20-hour investigation, we spread that out over a week or two, maybe 4 hours today, maybe 3 the next, again, to maximize our opportunities. And then we'll put together a comprehensive report, and we email it to them. And I can tell you, it years ago, before we were doing all this, I can tell you one case. There was a pretty wealthy couple that were divorcing. They had 2 adult sons. Had moved out of the house. Everything was good. They're doing real well. They just, one of those things, you're married 30 years and you look at each other all of a sudden at an empty house and you say, well, who are you? So they were getting an amicable divorce. But she says, I just want to make sure something's a little off. And he happened to have a guy that had a very successful business, and he had a business here in town 3 days a week, and 2 days a week, every week, he had a satellite business in Atlanta. And he was up in Atlanta. So I had an investigator fly up the day before he was due to go to Atlanta and wait up there he had a townhouse up there, and did some recon of the area. And I flew up on the plane with him, actually, a couple rows behind. And within 2 hours, we busted him. And he was certainly having an affair. But, the wrinkle was that it wasn't with a female. So, and these things, and it's funny, because the reason I bring this one up, and there's been several of them. Those are becoming more and more commonplace. But the female, she got it back, and she called me after she got it. She says, thank God it wasn't a woman. She was just relieved. It just seems, I don't know, it seems sometimes, the midlife crisis back in the day when guys would chase their secretary and buy a red Corvette, now all of a sudden they think they're bisexual or something. I don't know, but it's really, I can tell you many, many more stories that are very similar to that. Similar results.
I read an article. I read an article once that said, like, men who are millionaires or multimillionaires, the more affluent they are, the more likely they are to cheat. Do you think that's true or not really?
It happens at all financial stratas. I don't really see a connection there. I can tell you that in the area of town where I live and where we get many of our clients, it's a high-end area. A lot of the movers and shakers that built the city long ago are from this area, and they're the politicians, the doctors, the lawyers. They're all working all day, and the trophy wife is sitting at home getting lonely and bored, and that's where most of our clientele come from in these types of cases. But and it's morphed into various other. We specialize in technical surveillance countermeasures sweeps as well, and we find hidden bugs and all over it, and particularly in some of the high-end cases. We found 8 hidden cameras in this doctor's house a couple of months ago. But and we've got special technicians that are trained in how to use this equipment. We got trained at Research International along with Secret Service people a couple of years ago. So we know how to use the equipment, and that's another part of these infidelity suspicion cases, because particularly in divorce scenarios, because a lot of times there's a lot of money involved, and that again morphs into the other aspect of that is their kids. And we get a lot of child custody cases. I signed a couple more this morning, as a matter of fact. Fighting every child custody. So, and that's tough. But, we get a lot of it. And they're all kind of related. So the TSCM work, we do a lot of that as a result of the infidelity investigations. And also child custody is an offshoot of infidelity as well.
All right. Well, let's do this. We're going to one last break. When we come back, maybe you could talk a little bit about how attorneys use the information that you have in a divorce case. So stay with us. Don't go anywhere, and we'll be back in a moment.
Be a pleasure.
Consumers, do you have bad credit? Can't purchase a house or car? Paying too much in interest on your credit cards and loans? Scammed by credit repair companies? There is hope. You can get back on track and do it the right way. Call Credit Education Consultants today at 813-500-6064. That's 813-500-6064. Or go to crediteducationconsultants.com now and get the help you need. Don't delay. Call today. Mortgage reps and realtor inquiries are also welcomed.
Okay, we're back on Fraudsters Radio, 24/7 AM FM radio. We're the sworn enemy of fraudsters, scammers, scallywags, and also cheaters as of today. We have our special guest, Mark Aubin. Mark, I would surmise that if there was a bigger majority of people that are millionaires getting themselves in trouble because they're millionaires, that they have women throwing themselves at them, and the temptation is just more there for them to go astray. Any feel for that?
Well, yes and no, and your thought process is accurate. But as a practical matter, as I said earlier, it goes across all financial strata. But yeah, you're right. They do. They are targeted more, and here again, it really depends on the subjects because every case is just so different. We never know what we're going to get until we get involved with it. But there's no question. It's just the thing is there's not as many of those multimillionaires walking around as there are just regular middle income people.
Right.
So just by that, with sheer volume.
With all the stuff with Harvey Weinstein and the Bill Cosby and these guys, why? Do you have any feel for why these guys they just become out of control? Do you know? It goes beyond. Obviously they're cheating. A guy like Cosby has been married to his wife for I think almost 50 years. But people that are in that, they're almost to the point that they've just gone beyond cheating. It just becomes more or less of a disease or a habit or what? Do you run into that a lot?
I don't, to be honest with you. Those are the real unique examples. Those people have a sickness. Cosby was actually drugging these women.
Right.
Come on. Frankly, it's not that hard to go out there and find some woman to have sex with if you're a decent man and you spend some time with them, treat them properly. It's really not that hard. You don't have to drink. As far as the Weinstein, he was just drunk on power and got away with whatever he wanted with, and in the California type mentality. So that again, it's some type of a mental sickness. I don't know that much about it. I really haven't looked into it very much because I'm really not interested in it.
I think they just think they're untouchable when they get to a certain level of power and money. But one of the things I did want to talk about, is what happens. Okay, so now, you're working for, a client who's going through the divorce. So what actually happens? Divorce in Florida, usually don't they just say, hey, you're divorced, split all the problems, split all the bills, split everything. But how does having the evidence of cheating maybe help your client in the divorce case with the attorney?
Well, I can tell you that I talked myself out of a lot of work just because of my ethics and my faith. Because people call me all the time. I want to catch you. I want to prove she's cheating or he's cheating so I could use it in the divorce case. And then I ask them right away, has your attorney explained to you that Florida is a no-fault state for divorce? And I said, what's that mean? I said, well, it really doesn't matter. You can cheat all you want. You can have sex in your bed with your husband laying next to you, and you can have sex with another man. It doesn't matter. They can't even consider it in Florida. The only time it can really have any type of an effect, I believe, is if it falls under the category of what they call marital waste, because anything during the marriage that comes in, no matter who brings it in, is a marital asset. So, for example, and I can give you an example of a case like this too. But if you're using marital funds to set up your side dish in a condo on the beach and paying all the bills and giving them a car and all that stuff, well, you're going to be liable for that. And we had a case similar to that. Again, it was an older couple in their mid-50s, and they were getting a divorce, and it wasn't quite as amicable. But and she wanted to know what was going on. Sure enough, this guy had set up some companies and different names and things like that, and he was funneling money, and he bought his side dish, a condo on the beach, and a Range Rover, and paid for all of it. But by the time the forensics was done, financial forensics was done, it seemed that he siphoned off about $3 that the wife didn't know about. So of course he's responsible to get that back in. And funny that his side dish wasn't.
Is there an exception to that case in terms of prenups? Like, I know Florida's no fault, but if there was a prenup signed in Florida, and maybe part of it was the terms that if one person cheats, does that ever happen? Where then,
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, a properly drafted prenup. A properly drafted prenup is legally valid, and that's a great idea. The other bit of caution I would give that sometimes might seem a little bit harsh, but sometimes a male or female, whoever it might be, they might own property, and they own it free and clear. A $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 house, and it's in their name only. And then they get married, and they put the other person's name on it. Well, 3 years later they get divorced. Or 6 months later they get divorced, and now that person gets half of their. So, and that happens alarmingly frequently. People just, you're married, you're happy, you think you're doing the right thing. You put your new spouse's name on their property, and bam, now it's gone. I would advise against that, and I strongly advise to get, as you referenced earlier, prenups whenever possible. No one should have a problem with a prenup.
Let me ask you, Mark, as an attorney and as a private investigator, if someone does suspect something, and I want you to wear both of your hats at the same time, if you can, but who do I go to first? Do I call an attorney and then the attorney calls you, or am I better off coming to the Mark the private investigator and then have him do the work and then go find the attorney? What's the first step that someone, if they suspect something, what should they take, you or the attorney? I mean, you the PI or you the attorney?
It goes to those cases as an attorney in the legal concept point of view. But it goes both ways. But the vast majority of people, they want to confirm their suspicions before they go to take that step, the legal step. They want to make damn sure they're doing the right thing, and they want to have the concrete evidence. Once we give them the report, now they need one way or another to make those critical life-changing decisions that they're getting ready or considering to make, and that they need to make, being unfaithful.
Yeah, because it would seem to me that it would be a little premature to go to an attorney and say, look, I suspect something, when in fact what they should be doing is coming to Mark Aubin, the PI, to confirm any suspicions that they may have.
Exactly.
Yeah,
give us a call. What
if on a slim chance their gut instinct was wrong for whatever reason, then they could just blow up their whole marriage, and
exactly.
It could be something entirely different. And it makes me think, like, I'm not a liar. I'm very ethical, but I remember years ago I was in a relationship and the fellow I was dating, thought I had something going on, when in reality I was actually planning a surprise birthday party. So that was why I was being sneaky, because I didn't want him to know it was a surprise birthday party. So, I could understand why that person would be upset, but there was nothing going on other than I didn't want to ruin the surprise, and maybe I'm not the best at being sneaky and doing that. So you don't want to blow something up where nothing's actually happening, and it's actually to benefit the person.
Oh, yeah, but like Mark said, which is rather scary, that 95% of the time, if you suspect something, something's probably going on.
Yeah, well, those there, there's a good chance. There's no plausible explanation otherwise for a lot of those signals. I mean, there's just not. You can lie and you can try to make up excuses, but based on the totality of the circumstances and the number and the volume of the behaviors and indicators, there's no plausible explanation.
Right, and I can think of that in my case when I was younger. Usually when I suspected I was right, and I was pretty much my own detective, and I was able to figure it out. And for me, that's the end, because you can't lie to my face and tell me you're not doing anything, and meantime you're out doing something. There's something just wrong morally and ethically with that. So we're coming to the close of the show, Mark. So again, maybe just tell us a little bit about your company. How can people get a hold of you?
Well, we've got a very high-ranking webpage, TopGunInvestigations.com. And that's how we get that, and referrals and word of mouth is how we get a great deal of our work. Plus the fact that they just like the name Top Gun Investigations. They also like the fact that I'm an attorney, and to be honest with you, like them or not, lawyers are critical because they're trained by the rules to know the rules of the game, and you don't get that in Investigator. That means if you're playing a common board game, everybody usually just plays along, moves the pieces around the board. But if there's a problem, you can bet the lawyer's probably the only one that read the instructions inside the box top. So that's what I do, and I give a lot of legal advice based on my experience. Just to give legal advice to people. Like I said, I talk myself out of a lot of work by explaining that you can't use that in divorce. It doesn't matter, and oftentimes they'll say, but I just need to know for my own peace of mind. And I say, well, okay, you need to know up front because I'm not going to do anything remotely unethical as an investigator and attorney or just, as I said, in my faith. But, I've been having my legal experience and my courtroom experience, and in addition to all the years of investigative, there's not a whole lot of other people that can offer that. Actually, there's none that I know of. I also I serve as legal counsel for on the board of directors for the Florida Association of Licensed Investigators. That's like the second largest in the country. I'm also a Florida board certified investigator, and I'm elected to that board of directors as well. We provide a multidisciplinary firm. I got a Spanish division that handles all our bilingual clients that don't speak English. And again, as I said, the offshoot is the technical surveillance countermeasures division, the TSCM group. They go out, we sweep cars, we sweep houses, we sweep offices. And a lot of that is direct correlation between the infidelity investigation and again, of course, the child custody. But
Mark, let me ask you quickly. You also do other PI work besides cheat and spouses too. Can you talk a little bit about that in the closing seconds?
Absolutely. Yeah, we do. Like I said, so we have one of my partners actually last year got his FBI digital forensics examiner certification. So we do all kinds of computer forensics. He actually had 2 revenge porn cases he solved in the last year, and had those guys arrested actually because that's illegal now in Florida, not in all states. But he's able to set up a tripwire, and this one last guy was pretty sophisticated. He was able to route it through several countries, and he had about 12 different Facebook accounts and emails and that stuff. But sooner or later, even though those technologically advanced, we can catch them. So we can do cyber intrusion work, we do technical surveillance, we do criminal, pretty much anything where investigative, any kind of investigations will be beneficial. Suicide cases, unfortunately, we've done a few of those as well. Cargo theft, any kind of unexplained deaths and things of that nature. But we pretty much do it all. And if I do my association on the board of directors with the Florida Association of Licensed Investigators, I can usually find someone that can do that kind of work. So if you can't do it, I will definitely refer someone that I know is competent that can take care of that problem.
Well, we got to close that with that.
Yep. So thanks, Mark, for joining us. Yep.
Sure,
Mark Aubin, Top Gun Investigations. You've been a big help. If somebody needs a private investigator, call Mark. And for our listeners, thanks for joining us today on Fraudsters Radio. Join us again next week, same time, same place. And remember, we want to hear your stories. You can contact us through the Fraudsters Radio Facebook page. Guys, I want to thank you both. Great show. Hopefully it helped our listeners.
Bye, guys.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you.